Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the webinar series here hosted at the Ball State Center for Professional Selling. My name is Deva Rangarajan, and I am the director of the Sales Center. And today we have a very, very special guest. I am thrilled and honored to have a consummate sales professional, founder and CEO of the National Association of Women Sales Professionals, Miss Cynthia Barnes. She's
Hello.
here. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about some of the big challenges and issues facing women sales professionals, but why it is also important for firms to understand that women sales professionals can be a great source of professionalism, diversity, and not to mention the effectiveness of any sales initiatives in organizations.
Yes.
So Cynthia, so tell me a little bit more about yourself. So what is your history? How did you get into sales yourself? And how did you found this body that is doing great work?
Thank you. I started in sales by accident, as a lot of people do. I was selling for a university, a for-profit university. The position was labeled an enrollment counselor, and anytime you get paid based upon the number of students, in that case, that you enroll, it's technically sales. So I started there and taught myself how to sell. And from there, I sold in a multitude of verticals, mainly male-dominated industries, moved around the country with new opportunities. And then in 2016, I thought, well, how do I level that up? How do I help more women get to the top 1% and enjoy some of the things that I have enjoyed? And that's when I started NAWSP and then the consulting arm, Barnes Sales Institute.
Oh, that's interesting. So essentially you say that you have your own sales institute, you have the NAWSP, and if I remember correct, you have 13,000 plus members.
Yes, 13,800. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that you have all that. And actually, one of the things which struck me when I went to your website is you mentioned something before we even get into women and men sales professionals. You had something that said a lot of sales reps today are struggling to hit quota.
Yes.
Why do you think that is the case?
It could be a multitude of things, both men and women. Lack of adequate sales training, not applying themselves, not having their goals big enough. There's a lot of different reasons why sales reps don't hit quota. What we like to focus on is how do we provide women sales professionals with the professional development to face the unique challenges or overcome the unique challenges that they face, as well as provide them with the professional development to enhance or amplify the innate strengths that they have.
I think that's very interesting because there are a couple of things from what I'm hearing you say is, yes, there are certain things that are common to both men and women in how to hit quota. But from what I hear you saying is that women might have some unique challenges on top of all the other challenges that men face as well. And that is the reason why you had this. So can you maybe stress some of those challenges that they face?
Sure.
Yeah.
In specifically selling in male-dominated industries, there could be chances in which you're talking to a prospect and there's no credibility or a lack of credibility, or someone challenges your credibility simply because you happen to be a woman. Countless times I hear in the rooms of NAWSP around the country, women saying, well, male prospects will say, let me talk to the decision maker, or let me talk to your boss, or honey, let me talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. There are times when women go into a sales conversation with a sales engineer who happens to be a man, and the prospect, even though she is the sales executive or the account executive, the prospect who is a man will speak to the sales engineer and totally overlook her. So there are unique challenges that we face. I'm not going to even get into the confidence because that's secondary, but implicit bias is huge, and overcoming that bias is one of the factors that we need to address.
And Cynthia, it's very interesting because it's just not with the customers, right? Sometimes a lot of women sales professionals face challenges within their own organizations too, right?
Correct.
Especially for managers who might not necessarily know how to handle. I mean, they might have the best intentions, but they might not know how to handle.
Exactly. I talk with sales managers, male sales managers all the time, who coach women and men the same. And in reality, you need to coach women differently than you need to coach men. For example, women going into sales leadership. I did a roundtable discussion once, and I asked the men around the table who were sales managers and VPs, I said, if a man comes to you and says that he wants to go into sales leadership, what do you coach him on? And they said, well, things like forecasting and budgets and things like that. And I said, if a woman comes to you and says that she wants to go into sales leadership, what do you coach her on? And the answer was, well, confidence, emotional intelligence, things like that. And I said, why the difference? And that started a whole new discussion on why there was a difference in the way women are coached to go into sales leadership versus men.
And I'm assuming that as part of the offerings of the NAWSP as well as your Sales Institute, that you have programs specifically to not just women, but also how can organizations benefit from getting their male leaders to also better manage a diverse workforce in terms of how to deal with these kinds of diverse issues as well.
Correct. The NAWSP focuses on helping women get to the top 1% or better manage themselves in a male-dominated industry with both internal and external customers and prospects. The Barnes Sales Institute helps Fortune 500 companies create environments and cultures in which women in sales thrive.
So you talked about some of the unique challenges that women face in their careers as well, right? So how can they go about addressing this? Because there's so many challenges, right? Are there some challenges which they have to internalize or learn to deal with it, or they should never have to internalize? They should have channels where they can actually go out and talk to professionals and get the necessary support.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I started in NAWSP, was so that women around the country could come to the rooms for both in person and virtually to get the support that they need, because the truth be told, there is another woman that has been where she is and who has answers to the problems that are upmost in her mind.
So because that's for me is one of the key things is that I was actually recently in a conference where they were talking about this concept of women in sales, and there was a presentation made based on some research that they'd conducted and based on what was happening. And the finding was that if they took a look at how women and men were successful, they found out that there were different characteristics that led to, and different, not just characteristics, it's got to do with their personalities, it's got to do with their attitudes, and different things led to different levels of success. And what struck me the most was that women used much more of the skill sets that are necessary for a cohesive team to be successful rather than men. And I thought it was very interesting that if you take a look at even what makes women successful as compared to men, and now I'm talking of generalizing, of course, there are going to be outliers as well. And in your opinion, do you also see that women use different skill sets to be successful in the job as against what men do?
Yes. For example, traditional sales training tends to focus a lot on relationship building.
Yeah.
And we know that building relationships is crucial in sales. People buy from you, not from your company, for example. Women are naturals at building relationships. So to spend an inordinate amount of time on how to build relationships is almost a waste of time for coaching and training women in sales, because we do that naturally.
Yeah. So now if you take a look at that from that perspective, would you then say that even within sales, some functions are more cut out to women and some functions are more cut out to men, and organizations can benefit from that both could be leading to top positions, ability to earn, everything is the same, but some, let's say for example, key account management. From what I see from what you say is that key account management is about building relationships, not just with the customer, but also leveraging the kind of relationships that you've built within your own organization. And in that perspective, do you think that women would make better account managers? And then, for example, for lack of a better word, that I know that you would hate the word hunters, but men would make better business development professionals. I'm not saying better than women, but
I would respectfully disagree.
Sure.
The women that I have found succeed no matter what position they try, as long as they have the appropriate coaching in order to do so.
Got it. So, which means that, but if that is the case, I think you're making the case for what I've already observed with some of my students is that irrespective of the profession, irrespective of what your role is in sales, that women are more likely to be successful. And this is no dissing men or something, but it's just the fact that I've observed when we run sales competitions, and we actually observed every time it is our women sales students who actually succeed no matter the challenge. So essentially what you're saying is research is the way you would interpret research would assume that, okay, men would do this and women would do that in the sales profession. But actually from what I hear you say is that, but that's actually not the case. Women will excel in every situation that they're put in, depending upon how they're coached and how they're able to make the most of the situation that they've been dealt with. Am I correct in understanding that?
Correct. As long as the playing field is level. So one of the reasons I started NAWSP and Barnes Sales Institute was because when I was growing up in sales, I had access to sales coaching and training from a male's point of view. Yeah. So traditional sales approaches were created by men for men at a time when men made up the majority of the sales force. So here we are in 2019, where 39% of the sales force is female. These women have access to primarily male-centric approaches. So when you have only access to male-centric approaches, the playing field is not level, because it does not, those traditional sales approaches do not address a woman's innate strengths, as well as it doesn't address the unique challenges that she faces.
Let me answer it, because saying this, a couple of things, it triggered my mind, a couple of things. One was, you mentioned the fact that 39% of the female, the women that are in the sales force right now, why is it only 39%? Why can it not be 50%? Why is it that women have a hesitancy towards going into sales?
I think it's a number of things. If you ask women, what is your impression of a sales professional? Normally the word that comes to mind is salesman. Again, there's a bias, because that's how the profession started out, was in years ago, you associate sales with this fast talking used car salesman. So another point is that in order to see yourself being successful at something, you need to see others that look like you being successful in it too. And for years, the sales profession has been dominated by men. So in order for a woman in high school and college to say, I want to be a sales professional, woman sales professional, she's got to see someone that looks like her in a successful sales role. So that is part of it. And also corporations need to be intentional about not only hiring women in sales, but creating environments in which they thrive.
So can you give an example of what an organization could do to have an environment where women can thrive? Because the fact is that an organization should balance a very fine line between inclusivity, because that's the next step, right? So essentially now we're going to look at the gender diversity, but we also have other kinds of diversity. So how could a firm have this kind of inclusivity as part of the environment that they have? You see what I mean? That is, how can I do it without trying to alienate the majority? You don't want to alienate the majority, but at the same time, you want to make sure that what we call is a minority, for lack of a better word, have the same access to everything that the majority have.
So how about, instead of creating an inclusion plan, we create one in which everyone feels as if they belong? And the difference here is this: if I have a corporation and I try to include you, then I am inviting you to my culture and asking you to become a part of my culture the way it stands. Instead of saying, how about I create a culture in which you feel as if you belong? So a lot of women in sales feel like they have to fit in. For example, in outside sales roles, a woman has to prospect. However, her competition could be a man. They're both calling on the same man. What if the man, her competition, says, hey, Mr. Prospect, we're going to a wine and whiskey bar, or a whiskey and cigar bar. And the male prospect says, you know what, I enjoy cigars, I enjoy whiskey, let's go. So her company, the woman sales professional, says, what are you going to do in order to get that prospect to spend outside time with you, that bonding time?
Yeah.
If she doesn't feel authentically or the ability to be authentic, maybe she doesn't like cigars and whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
So the company has got to say, well, whatever you decide to do in order to spend time with this prospect, we will support, rather than giving you a bullet point list of these are the things that you can do. Athletic outings, football outings, hunting, fishing, golf, all of those things.
Very, very, because essentially what you're saying actually is that this is not just one organization, it's actually the society that should step up, right? Because now what you're saying actually is my customers should also encourage, again, when I say encourage, it sounds patronizing. My intention is not to patronize, because the idea that the buying firm should also then say, listen, it does not matter that we are going to encourage whatever kind. So yes, you as an individual, as a buyer, might like to go to cigar bars, but if you're going to have two competitors and one of them happens to be a male and a female, that your preference for entertainment, which is not core to what you're buying, should be taken out, right? It should be removed from that. And essentially, it's just not the sales organization, but we also need society. When I mean society, it's also the buying organizations also need to do this if they need to go beyond this. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think based on what you're saying is, even the buying organization is likely to benefit, because it could be that they might get a better deal from a sales rep who might not do all the things necessary, which should not be the case, right? You want the best possible deal over and beyond the entertainment. Wow.
Yes.
This is very, very, very fascinating. So now you talked about the concept of the 39% women, and you said it's probably because people think of used car salesmen. But as an academic who tries to have a sales center, we even have problems attracting young men into sales, because it's still a dirty word. So I think it's that the concept of sales being dirty is just not an issue with men and women, but I think it's also factors that off the portrayal that you see, will have the fast talking. So that doesn't help either. But I completely buy into your idea that not having enough female sales roles models who have been in sales and being successful is another reason why we struggle to have women in our sales programs. Or they come, they take part in our competitions, but then after that they go on to marketing roles. Nothing wrong against marketing roles, but if you want more female and women sales leaders, we want them to continue on in sales roles as well.
Right.
Yeah.
We also have to take a look at who's doing the hiring.
True.
Because
please.
If a woman goes through your sales program at your college, then she goes into marketing. My question is, why does she go to marketing? Because she already has a success with sales in your college. So if she goes to a marketing position, was she applying for a sales role? Did someone talk her out of a sales role? Did she, within that company that she's interviewing, not see any sales leaders in the interview process?
Indeed. It could be that indeed, because I think that's one of the things, because we have a sales center, they do come, they don't necessarily, at least today in our faces, they don't say they're looking for male men versus women, at least they don't tell us that. But the fact remains is that there's a lot of kind of misconception that if you go to certain industries, male dominated industries, that the preference for the customers would also be men salespeople as well.
Sure.
Let me ask you another thing which you triggered, which I think is very, very curious. I do not know if we'll find the answer today, but I'm very curious. You said the sales management models that we talked about have been from a men-centric perspective.
Yes.
Now, in your opinion, how would a woman-centric sales management training look like? I'm very curious to hear that.
It would be addressing the individual and making sure that she has the tools that she needs in order to be successful. And that could be in a myriad of ways. There may be some women that need help with emotional intelligence, forecasting, and confidence. But don't assume that every single woman needs those things. What I'm asking leadership to do is to customize, just like you would with the man. Don't assume, and customize that sales leadership path. Also, you have to have a designated and very specific sales leadership path that says to everyone, male and female, here's what you need to do. Here are the milestones that you need to accomplish in order to go into sales leadership. Make it very granular, specific, and clear.
What do you think about it? What do you think is going to happen? Because if AI steps in, right? Maybe that's a solution, right? If artificial intelligence comes in, and essentially artificial intelligence does not have a male or female bias, unless, of course, you can always go in and say, wait, the way it is programmed has a man and woman kind of bias in it. But artificial intelligence could level the playing field, right? Essentially take a look at the kind of conversations, and artificial intelligence but then come up and say, these are the kind of protocols you need to be putting in place to make sure that that woman sales leader can have this path. So essentially the kind of emotions and all the thing that a male or a man would bring in might be removed because it's just looking at facts. Would that be something you think going forward, that artificial intelligence would be a great leveling field for men and women in sales?
I still think there's an opportunity for women to get the coaching that they need, regardless of what technology does.
Yeah.
That would be like putting a Band-Aid on a stab wound.
Yeah, but I think at least if you take a look at the way it is progressing, from what I'm hearing you say, that is also going to be a welcome change. If at the end of the day, it does not matter if you're a male, if you're a woman or a man, but the idea is it's going to be looking at the conversations that you're having, seeing are those conversations resulting in wins. Of course, it is the fact that if a man buyer decides to buy with a man salesperson, okay, artificial intelligence cannot take a look at it. But the idea is that hopefully that will be a level playing field. But again, you still need to address the issues in terms of how to deal with it. I think it's really, really cool.
Yes.
So now one of the things that we talk a lot about in sales is the fact that salespeople in general, now not specifically talking about men or women, there's a lot of work that says that as they progress in their careers, they need different kinds of support mechanisms because as they progress in their career. So in your opinion, for women in sales, as they progress in their careers, what are some resources that they can turn to today available to make sure that that they are on the right path? There's a sounding body apart from the NAWSP, or I've also heard about the Girls Club. So there's a couple of other wonderful kind of associations for women in sales. So what are the other resources that they could turn to get the necessary kind of knowledge, the motivation for them to proceed further?
The two associations that you mentioned, NAWSP and Girls Club, are excellent at that. If there's not a chapter, for example, NAWSP near them, there's also mentorship programs within the association. So I would recommend that a woman find two things. Number one, a mentor. And number two, a sponsor. And plug into somebody that can help her get where she wants to go.
And should the mentor and the sponsor, should they be of the same gender, or they can be non-gender specific, but somebody who understands the challenges that they face?
I am not opposed to having more than one mentor and more than one sponsor. There's not a limit. Indeed. So as far as mentors and sponsors, I would get one of each. I would get two mentors, one that's a man, one that's a woman, and two sponsors. You can always disregard any information that is not relevant. However, having those two viewpoints is crucial to your success. And having a male sponsor is actually, I think, beneficial, because if you're looking to have someone that is in the meetings of the C-suite, most likely it's going to be a man, because only 11% of VP of sales are women. So having a male sponsor to actually speak up and say, hey, my subordinate Sarah is doing wonderful work, and actually vouch for you and speak for you, that you can't buy that kind of PR, if you will.
Indeed. That's very interesting, because only recently, for the longest time, you hear the term mentors and sponsors, but then for the longest time, I did not understand what was the difference, except that recently we had a woman sales leader from Microsoft that was actually talking, and she clearly said that sometimes she would not have the time to mentor, but she would have the time to sponsor because of how busy she was. And then she was talking about how sponsorship was much more limited in space and time and what is needed. And then, of course, you would move on after that, whereas a mentor would be something which is much more over a longer period of time, asking for a longer commitment.
Yes.
And that's very, very interesting that you say, as well as that mentor. And do you think that there are enough male professionals out there willing to actually work together, understand the complexities of managing and dealing with their mentees or their sponsors?
I think there are.
Indeed.
I
So,
think there are.
and what would your advice be to them? So that, for me, that is what it is. What is your advice be to those people? What should they be doing out there?
I think that one of the first things they need to do is let it be known that they're willing to sponsor and mentor.
Yeah.
Some of the responsibility is also on the woman to actually speak up and say, hey, raise my hand, this is what I need.
Yeah.
As a sponsor or mentor, I would also look at the mentee and say, I need you to be granular and specific about what you want to get out of this relationship, how long it's going to last, so that we have a guideline or some guidelines and a roadmap of what we want to accomplish, or else we're just buddies hanging out.
And do you think when you take a look at, especially for women sales professionals, should the mentors as well as the sponsors, should they be from the same organization, or
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, right?
Not necessarily.
Indeed.
Sales is one of those skills that transcends industries and all types of boundaries. It's nice to have a sponsor within your organization, but a mentor can be from a totally different organization, can be from a totally different vertical, and be able to give you insight so that you can broaden your horizons, because I don't know of anybody who wants to sell the same thing for their whole sales career.
Fantastic. Now, so one of the things, Cynthia, I hear a lot about is the fact is that you have the glass ceiling, right? The idea is that you have a glass ceiling about how far women can go. And you already mentioned it, right? At one point in time is that women sales leaders account for a very, very small percentage. So if women account for only 39% of the sales jobs, then I'm assuming women sales leaders are even far fewer.
Yes.
And first of all, why is that the case? And then we can talk about breaking the glass ceiling. So why is it that even if we get 39%, which is, by the way, I'm really happy it's 39%. I was expecting it to be worse. That I'm glad it is at least 39%. But why is it that it starts decreasing as they move up?
A number of reasons. One of the most prominent is that women of a certain age decide that they would like to start families.
Got it.
And oftentimes, I won't say all, but oftentimes going back to a rigorous sales career does not correspond with her new obligations with family. So in order to make sure that she comes back to that role, a corporation has to make it inviting and also put in concessions to make sure that she is successful. So a lot of times corporations will pay you or have an underwritten rule that we're going to pay you and your success is contingent on face time, the number of hours that you spend in the office. So how about instead of paying for face time, we actually pay for performance? What you're saying to that woman sales professional is, we understand that you have obligations outside of the office, and we are sensitive to that. And this goes for men too, who are family oriented. As long as you get your job done and you meet your quota, we don't need to see you.
Indeed. So that's one. So essentially, one is, of course, is how they're evaluated. But so one is desire to raise a family. The second thing would be having an organization that supports it. Is there anything else that prevents them from actually getting there? The third thing could just be the men's club, right? It could be. It could be just a men's club saying that, okay, no matter how much you go, unfortunately, the people who get promoted are only the men for whatever reason. Apart from anything else, you think it could be that women might find maybe after doing this, not just the rigor, but the mental challenge might be better in other functions within an organization?
Let's go back to that inclusion statement. Are we including women, or are we creating a culture in which they feel as if they belong? So when the guys go out on Friday night for poker night, and the sales managers, the VP of sales, they all get together for poker night, is that woman invited? And are there activities that they can do that don't necessarily exclude her or to make her feel uncomfortable?
Indeed. or maybe make her go or not be herself in trying to fit in,
Yes,
right?
because
Because I
there's a
think that's
difference between, yeah,
that could be the worst thing, actually, because okay, the other two things, I'm not saying they should be making peace. They may at least make peace with that, but not being themselves would put a
yes.
huge stress on everything that they do as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talk a lot about
Yeah.
authenticity at NAWSP, and there are some women that would love a poker night. They would absolutely beat
Yes.
down the door. They would be the first one in the door.
Indeed.
They would love a poker night.
Indeed.
However, what I'm encouraging is for women to, number one, sell with authenticity, and
Yeah.
number two, stand up for things in which they can be their authentic self. Bring their authentic self to the selling situation, to sales leadership, to everything that they do. Because there's a difference between fitting in and feeling as if you belong there.
Belong, indeed. Do you think, initially I wanted to differentiate between that and breaking the glass ceiling, but I think everything that you said also leads to that too, right? If women feel that they belong there, that breaking the glass ceiling might not feel like breaking the glass ceiling, because maybe there's no ceiling there at all. If an organization makes them feel that they belong, right? Am I correct in understanding that as well? If that happens?
In the rooms of NAWSP, we refer to that as dancing on the glass ceiling, because the glass ceiling is always going to be there, we believe.
Yeah.
And breaking the glass ceiling is a violent term. And women shy away from things like hunter and breaking the glass ceiling and anything that is violent. Some women find that, that's a male-dominated term. So at NAWSP, we talk about dancing on the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling will always be there. However, we're going to accept that, do whatever we can in order to get to the top of it and just dance on it.
You know what? I think you said something. I think the next time I'm going to teach a class in sales, I'm going to still use the hunter term, but I'm going to have a female hunter as a photograph of that, because it's saying that women cannot hunt, right? You can have a woman hunter too. So the idea is that, because it's going to be very hard to change terminology of sales itself, but why don't I then say, you know what? If in your head the idea of a hunter is a male man hunter sounds bad, but you know what I mean. See, if you show a person of a male hunter, why can't I then say, you know what, it's a hunter, but I'm going to show that. And when it comes to a farmer, I'm going to show a female sales farmer, saying women can do both.
Yes, it starts with awareness.
You know what? Absolutely. I think that's what I'm going to try. You know what? And even this conversation, I feel that I'm bumbling through, but I would rather do that rather than saying it's not important, because that's the kind of conversations that all managers need to be having, all faculty need to be having, because if we are training future sales managers, and if they happen to be men, we need to tell them all these kind of things. And you will bumble, there's no perfect, you will stumble, but the key is at least the intention and the attitude, just like what we say with sales. We need to have the people with the right attitude, and the moment we have the right attitude, then we can work with that.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, what would your advice be for young women to go into universities which have a sales program and proactively seek a major or a minor in sales?
I would say do it, hands down. I would be so much further in my career if I had actually had collegiate schooling in sales. Sales is the best career for women. Sales provides you with the freedom and the flexibility to be able to do the things that you want to do and get paid handsomely for it.
I think that's a key thing. And I think there's nothing that it is only that men want more money. There's nothing wrong about wanting to have more money, because people always think of wanting to have more money as something very specific for men, because men happen to be not greedy for lack of a, but men love money. But hey, there's nothing wrong about wanting to have money to provide for yourself, being independent. And I think that is something that we have to kind of stress to a lot of our women sales students, women students, to actually consider something in sales as well.
Yes. Now, if I could add to that, as a woman, I say that their goal should be to make as much money as fast as possible, because you don't know what the future holds.
Absolutely.
So whether you want to go on maternity leave and determine when you go back to work, having a couple $100,000 or even $50,000 in the bank to take an extended maternity leave is an option that is nice to have. You may decide to go back in 3 weeks. That's fine. However, there may be circumstances that say, I want to return in a year. Having that money in the bank gives you that freedom and the flexibility to do so. There may be an instance in which you want to take care of an aging parent. And you say, I don't want to have them go into a home. I want care to come to them. Having that money gives you options. Money equals options.
Indeed.
And you can always give to your favorite charity with more money.
Indeed. No, so actually, I said one question, but I have this one question as well. Sorry about that. Is I love the fact that I saw one of the events that you hosted was in Barcelona.
Yes.
And I'm sure that amongst your association members, you have a lot of people from Europe as well.
Yes.
And my question is, do you see differences between the continents in terms of how women in sales are treated and have career paths? And do you see clear differences between the United States and North America on one side and Europe on the other side?
In some regards, yes.
Yeah.
The European women are extremely confident.
Yeah.
However, they have to fight much harder for a level playing field. And fortunately, the United States is further ahead. And I think that's in part because more women are speaking up and saying, hey, you know what? It's 2019 and we're still dealing with challenges from 1960. I was working with a company through Barnes Sales Institute, and in 2019, some of their women go to conferences. They're in a male-dominated industry. Some of their women go to conferences and they're sexually harassed. One was even accosted. And I'm thinking, this is 2019.
Exactly.
How in the world is this still happening? The Wall Street Journal reached out to us and we did a survey and found that 57% of our then 12,000 members have been sexually harassed at the hands of a customer or prospect.
And that's indeed, it's horrible. But
Yes.
it's horrible in this day and age. I'm not saying it should have been horrible at all times. But in this day and age, even now, despite everything that's happening, it's, indeed. So
we have some work to do.
Indeed. Absolutely. Cynthia, that's unfortunately now that's pretty much all the time that we have. But thanks so much. And more importantly, thank you for bearing with me with my questions. As a typical male who's still trying to make sure who thinks it is important that we should be doing this, but still is steeped in decades of being trained and acting and observing things. And I think change is going to be a slow process, but with the likes of NAWSP, the Girls Club, I think that change should be happening much faster.
Yes.
We're having more and more women coming in and pointing us out that that is not the right way to be addressing things. And then as a sales center director, I hope that that will be at the grassroots level where we encourage more women sales students to come in and try out a career in sales as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having the conversation, because it starts with a conversation, then there's awareness, and from there, with the right people on board and those who are willing to affect change, we can do this.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more, seeing all the kind of good things that you're doing out there as well, and hopefully have a lot of our students sign up and becoming members of the 13,800. That's pretty much what I heard. The 13,800 strong body of NAWSP, and maybe move towards 100,000, 150,000. Who knows?
That would be great. The more women we can help, the better. They can learn about us at nawsp.org, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is a great level playing field out there as well.
Absolutely.
Cynthia, thank you so much. And let's stay connected.